This work was commissioned in 1967 for the Abbey Festival for the Music Group of London to play, a superb group made up of the principals of the main London orchestras. And the commission was acquired thanks to the efforts of a young chap called Jeremy, whose surname I can't remember now, but he also got me a London performance of my first opera. He's the brother-in-law of Polly Toynbee, in fact, so he'll know who he is now. It was commissioned at a particularly busy and exciting time for me, and I think the music may well reflect that kind of excitement. I just completed my second piano sonata, which is for two players, just recently recorded by Richard Casey and Ian Buckle on a Prima Facie label. I was also quite busy working at Shots as head of production and chief house editor for contemporary music. And I had a backlog of 50 scores plus 2 new operas and a whole pile of new chamber music to look after, to get through on sale and into performance. So things were pretty mad. And on top of that, I was helping to organize the first of the SPNM Composers Weekends, which took place that March, a very exciting event which then ran on for some years after that. So this piece was had to be written in Tanglewood, because I was so busy in England. I managed to get a Margaret Lee Crofts Fellowship to go to Tanglewood as what you might call a mature composition student, studying with Schuller. I used to be, well, I still am absolutely fascinated by the meanings of words in language, because I trained as a translator anyway. And Hosanna in Hebrew, Hoshana, it doesn't mean hooray, or anything like that. It means pray for or support for whatever you're saying Hoshana about. In the Christian religion, it does mean praise be to God. And the reason I've chosen to spell it in the Italian way is in order to incorporate the third meaning, Osanna, because the first two letters, os, in Ashkenazic Hebrew, mean symbol, and these pieces are symbols. So that's why the title has a multiple purpose, even if it's a little bit hidden. And in fact, a lot of the individual titles are a bit hidden too, and I'm not going to disclose who they're in celebration of, quite simply because although they are important tributes, they're also very secret tributes, and in at least 2 cases, there's a very strong emotional content in the pieces. They are, if you like, in a funny sort of way, declarations of love towards people who've given me enormous support during that time, and they are still friends of mine, actually. The overall structure reflects in some ways the sense of liberalism that was prevailed in our culture at that time. We were expanding our borders to become far less isolationist, far less insular than we had been in the 40s and 50s, no doubt due to the war. Consequently, the structure of the piece, I wanted that to be a little bit liberalistic as well. There are 3 main movements which form the framework for the structure overall. Hosanna for M, the opening Hosanna, contains what you might call the main theme for clarinet. Hosanna for C in the middle moves on from that very linear opening and is like a central pillar with quite a lot of vertical structures in it, harmonies interlocking or in dialogue with all the linear movement, very often on the clarinet also. And then the final movement, Hosanna for S, is again linear with interpositions of vertical activity. The line in this case is formed very beautifully by and I'm talking about the superb playing today, by the cello and the violin. they go all the way through, gradually rising and rising to the top. And in fact, at the very end, the cello rises above the violin, playing very, very high harmonic. The G sharp, I think it is. The other instruments interrupt with little echoes of the earlier Osannas, some of which are played in any performance and some are not. In fact, overall, there are not 9 or 10, there are 14, or to be absolutely honest, 15, one of which got lost, unfortunately. That is the overall structure of the piece. Well, I've talked about the Osanna for M, which is just a beautiful, gentle line for solo clarinet with little pieces of gentle support by the cello, enriching the sound world for the piece. The absolute contrast to that is the one called For the Various Summer Mornings of the 28th of June, which is only effectively 3 seconds long. Therefore, the title is longer than the piece. And that's a wild kind of shout of excitement. Quite simply, I was sitting on the plane on the way over to Boston. First time I'd had a chance to escape from England for something like, 8 years anyway. And it was wonderful flying over to the States, and I just wrote this piece in the space between having glasses of wine. And so that is a piece which creates a kind of ritornello. You can put it anywhere you like, and you can repeat it 3 or 4 times. In this case, it's played 4 times, before and after the central Osanna for C, straight after the opening Osanna for M, and straight and immediately before the final and longest Osanna for S. And now, in between that very neat framework, which is created in this case by the players of Psafa, and it's beautiful. It has a kind of very beautiful symmetry to it. I have 2 joined movements. The Osannas for the colours about some people and for the 9 lost colour years. The first is just very gentle sounds like clusters, decorated by clusters on the piano, very, very quietly, and they're with crescendos and diminuendos, like an indrawn breath. A succession of these, and then for the 9 lost colour years, which immediately follows, it's like the second half of the piece, is a kind of loud guffaw, like the expulsion of breath, a relaxation of the tension that's been building up in the previous movement. The central movement, before that, there is Osanna for B, which in a sense exaggerates that original concept. There's some very, very quiet moments, almost nothing happening, except for the very first moment of all, which is a loud note. And these quiet movements are broken into by loud eruptions, again, a bit like laughter, freely written for the players. So that's like a development of the previous pair. Then we have Osanna for C, which, as I say, takes the line and puts these pillar-like vertical structures on the top of it, and that takes, to a certain extent, it's the clearest variation on the first movement. Then after that there is another various summer mornings, as I said, and then there are a little group of three movements. There is the Osanna for a Ghostless Spring, which is a wild piece for solo violin, all playing on the first and second, on the lowest two strings, accompanied by a kind of ostinato on piano, which is not quite the same each time. It's like a mad dance. Then there is Still Autumn, which is all the players play beautifully freely. They're just in pairs, each pair independently of the others, working through a very, very slow elaboration of the original clarinet line. And then there is One Wild Grey Ghost, that's right, yes, where everything goes very, very fast, but also free. And suddenly there is an interruption by the horn saying, hey, listen, chaps, pull it together again, will you? So to speak, very loud. He removes his mute, but he doesn't put his hand in the bell, so the sound is quite deliberately almost out of control. There's a big yell. That brings it to the whole thing, in a sense, to a climax. Then after the various summer mornings again, we have the final and longest, it's about 7.5 minutes, movement, which is a slow contemplation of everything that went before, supported throughout by this very gentle pairing of violin and cello, ending very, very, very quietly and gently.